Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our annual celebration of survivorship, where we hope to inspire you, celebrate you, and help you to realize that you're not alone in your breast cancer journey. I'm Rutter, and I'm the Executive Director of the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program. 2017 marks our 37th year of providing information, support, and hope to thousands of women and a few men diagnosed with breast cancer. Much has changed in the breast cancer world, but much has not. When we started in 1980, no one talked about cancer and certainly never mentioned the words breast cancer publicly. Our hotline was first named the Woman-to-Woman Hotline because we could not say breast cancer hotline out loud. Today, we are the oldest breast cancer hotline in the country, still fielding calls for those in need. Breast cancer was often dealt with in isolation, secrecy, and shame. Today, especially in October, breast cancer is all over the media, in businesses, and everywhere else. You see pink ribbons everywhere. Awareness is global, and people talk about breast cancer openly and publicly. There has been progress in understanding and treating breast cancer, targeted therapies, new things in genetic testing. And while the vast majority of women with breast cancer are surviving and living with what is now a chronic illness, hundreds of thousands of women are still being diagnosed each year. And that's why we're still here. There's so many people to thank for tonight. First, I really have to thank my incredible staff. Would you stand? Erin, who organized tonight's event, Raina, Michele, Kim, Alida, Angelica, Lois, Angela, Naomi, and our special public relations consultant, Lynn. We have with us some great interns this year: Cheryl, Nina, Katya, Amanda, and Natalie. Our advisory board, and I think we have a couple representatives, our chair, Joan Beater, and Pam Shapiro. And our volunteers. Our volunteers are really the backbone. They're the heart and soul of our program. They are committed, they are generous, they are compassionate, they are our ambassadors, and they are all amazing. Will all my volunteers who are here tonight please stand? A special thank you to our generous sponsors of our journal, our program this year, which looks so beautiful. This is the first year we did that, so thank you to our sponsors. We work very hard to make all of our services free and available to all, including tonight's event. To do so, we need the support from all of you. I ask you tonight to give what you can as part of our October crowdfunding and solicitation letter campaign and throughout the year. Thank you. We are honored to have our speakers share their stories tonight. And we're going to go with the flow because unfortunately 2 of our speakers can't be here tonight. And it's sort of a last-minute thing. Dr. Zoli was scheduled to speak and she's feeling under the weather. And Margaret Schroder Collins just called us. She had a follow-up reconstructive surgery that was moved up from last week to yesterday. And she's just not feeling up to it. She sent her husband, Chief Collins of the North Amityville Fire Department, to represent her, and I just sent him home to take care of her. So we're going to shake things up a little tonight. We realize that not all of you know our social workers, who they are, what they do, and what inspires them to do the work that they do each and every day that makes such a difference in the lives of others. I am very, very proud of my social work staff and wanted to briefly share them with you tonight. So through the evening you will be hearing from Erin, from Lois, from Angela, and from Alida. So let's get started with Erin Nau, our Counseling and Education Coordinator.
Surprise! We're here. So I know lots of you, which is really exciting for me to be able to stand up here and see so many faces that I know. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm Erin, the Counseling and Education Coordinator. And what that means is I wear a lot of different hats. I am lucky enough to do the individual counseling and facilitate the support groups. Right now we have 5 support groups that we're running, which is really, really special. And one of the things that's so amazing about my job is that if I have 3 women call me who have the same situation going on, I can start a support group. I'm very lucky to have the freedom to meet the needs of everyone who comes through our door, which is incredible, and I've never had that experience before. I'm really excited that we're starting our, excuse me, my allergies. We're starting a Touchstone group, which is basically a survivorship group. What we found is that people who are 18 months out of treatment still want to connect with other breast cancer survivors and check in with each other and find out what's going on in their community. So we're going to be starting that group the end of this month in 2 weeks, and I'm really excited to be facilitating that. So that's one of the new ones that we're starting. The other hat that I wear is I facilitate the educational forums. And what we do there is anybody who tells us things that they're concerned about, that are going on for them, we will find a professional to come and talk about any kind of educational thing that people are asking questions about. Last year we had a couple of people in the group say to us, you know, we're getting all this information in our patient portals, the medical records, and I don't know what anything means. We don't know what's happening in those records, and they're getting to us before the doctors come. So I found a doctor to come, and the doctor came, and I can speak for myself that I learned a ton, and the doctor told us what things mean in the different medical records or the patient portal. So we all left feeling a little bit better, and he also said, ask questions, ask your doctor questions, and it was nice to hear that from a doctor. The third hat that I wear is I get to supervise our MSW interns, which is really special for me because as much as I love facilitating the groups and doing the individual sessions, it's wonderful to see new social workers learn and experience that and hear from them what their experiences are with our wonderful, wonderful survivors. So when Hillary asked us to do this, she said, just talk about what inspires you. So I came up with a couple things, since I can't be up here for 45 minutes. So when I very first started about 4 years ago, I had a client come to me who was extremely anxious, and she told me that when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, her whole life changed. Everything about her life was different. And she used to be extremely independent, and she was afraid to do those things. She was afraid to ride a train to Boston by herself. She was afraid to do lots of different things that she used to do. So she would come in, and we would meet every week and talk about how to manage that anxiety. And as most of you who are survivors know, there's a lot of anxiety that comes with this, so we came up with lots of different strategies to help with that. And the good news is now she calls me once a year and she says, I'm not anxious anymore. And she tells me about all of the wonderful things that are going on in her life, and that's really special to see all of these different things that have gone on with her. In our groups, for me, the best days are the days that I don't have to say anything. that I just get to sit and listen to the survivors help each other out and empower each other and tell the person next to them, I've been there. I get what you're going through. And remind them that there are no dumb questions. They can ask anything in that room because the people in the room understand what they're going through. And to me, that there's nothing more special. And occasionally I get the phone call that someone says, you know what, the group's been great, but I think I'm okay now, and I'm ready to leave the group. And those are my favorite days. Even though I'll miss them, I know that they're in a good spot and ready to move on. And the final thing that inspires me is standing up here in front of all of you, having organized this event, and seeing everyone here to listen to these inspiring speakers. It's nice to know that we can all leave tonight knowing that there are other people who can carry the burden and lighten the load for us so that we don't have to do it alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. It's now my honor to introduce Michele Pincus. Yeah, you can clap. We first met Michele through her work with Pink Aid Long Island, where she has volunteered for the past 4 years. As she will tell you, she had tremendous support during her breast cancer treatment and wanted to help others who were not as lucky. She is part of the grants committee who supports different breast cancer organizations, including ours. Thank you very much. And we are very happy to have Michele share her story with us tonight. Michele?
Thank you. It's quite an honor to be here. And good evening to everybody. I'm proud to stand before you as a survivor tonight. But you are all the reason that we are here, the warriors in the audience. Those of you who have fought the fight, are continuing to fight the fight, and those of you who have supported the fighters. My story began simply enough as I was doing what I was supposed to do, getting my annual mammogram and sonogram for my cystic breasts. However, 10 years ago, after these routine tests, they told me to come back in 6 months rather than waiting a full year. I said okay and went on my merry way. Weeks later, my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer after her routine mammogram and sonogram and a biopsy. I returned to the radiologist sooner than 6 months and explained that I couldn't wait 6 months because my mother was just diagnosed with breast cancer. When they repeated the tests and advised me that there was so much there that they weren't sure what they were looking at, I picked up my films and marched directly to the office of a breast surgeon. After an MRI and 3 biopsies ordered by the breast doctor, I learned exactly what they were looking at. I got the call 3 days before I was leaving a job that I had been at for 17 years, and 1 week before starting a new opportunity. When the doctor called to tell me there was a malignancy in one breast, my first reaction once I stopped crying was, oh my God, how am I going to tell my mother, who had just started her breast cancer treatment? My doctor said, you are going to tell your mother that she saved your life. No truer words were spoken. Had she not been diagnosed, I would not have been as emphatic about getting an answer from doctors who were not sure what they were looking at. It was a difficult call that I had to make to my mother that evening. I had to repeat myself several times because she could not believe what she was hearing. We were forced to make a deal that we would let each other know if we needed each other, but we would rely on our own support systems otherwise, as she received her treatment in New York City where she lived, and I got mine on Long Island where I live. She's in the audience with us today, celebrating her survivorship as well. My first message from all of this, we'll call it lesson number 1, advocate for yourself. Do not be afraid, and do not let doctors or insurance companies dictate what you know best about your own body. So now I needed to have a lumpectomy between leaving a job and people that I loved working with for the past 17 years to start a wonderful new opportunity with complete strangers. They say timing in life is everything. Well, this was some lousy timing for sure. I was insistent on leaving the first job with a smile on my face, not sharing my news with anyone so I could go out on top. Going away party and all, I glued that smile to my face. I managed to schedule my lumpectomy between jobs and only had to postpone my start date by 1 day, which the new job had no problem with. First day of a new job is scary enough after 17 years. Try first day of work and having to tell your boss and human resources that you needed to go for radiation every day for the next 6 weeks. I sat in my new boss's office and explained that I had just been diagnosed with breast cancer and needed to come in late for the next 6 weeks. Thank goodness she was a woman and one with a big heart. When I explained what I was going through, she cried and told me to do whatever I needed to do and just make sure you let human resources know. She also said, if you think I'm a softie, wait till you tell the HR director. That was my next stop. And the HR director cried too. I told them both, I'm not crying, you can't either. And that's how I got through starting a brand new job with breast cancer. That's also why I still consider these two women friends, even though I left that position almost 5 years ago. Timing could not have been worse, but I had the support of wonderful people at my job. Yes, I was lucky. Lesson number 2, what sounds impossible can be done. Now on to the third lesson. Let's talk about strength. I have not yet mentioned to you that I'm a single mother. So while I was battling breast cancer, starting a new job as the sole breadwinner for my family, I was raising my daughter single-handedly, something I had been doing since she was 21 months old. She was around 10 at the time of my diagnosis, and I told her about my mother's cancer since she was losing her hair from chemo and looked a bit different with her wig. Now what was I supposed to tell my daughter, if anything? I went to speak to a child psychologist myself to figure out what and how to share what I needed to with an extremely bright, intuitive child. And she's watching this on the Facebook page right now from college. That led to this discussion. So remember how I told you that Nana had cancer. Well, because of that, I went to get checked, and they found out that I had a little bit of cancer, and they took it out, and now I'm fine. It's good to be 10. Having a little bit of cancer is similar to claiming you're a little bit pregnant. I explained that it was so little that I didn't need medicine that would make me lose my hair, and all was good with the world. What she didn't know, she didn't need to, that I was going for radiation for 6 weeks, followed by 5 years of injections to put me into early menopause, and oral medication for 5 years to interfere with the estrogen receptors in my cells. Her only question in response that day was, is it hereditary? A pretty big word for a 10-year-old. I explained that I did not have the type that was hereditary. I had already had the BRCA test, which came back negative, notwithstanding the fact that my mother and I were diagnosed within 3 weeks of each other, but that when she was old enough, she would be checked and had nothing to worry about. She then asked if she could go watch TV. I knew that she needed time to process this information, and a few days later, she had more questions, including, can she tell anyone? I told her it was not a secret, but she has to be prepared for people's responses. Like, you know how when you tell someone that your aunt was in a car accident, or that you had a car accident, and they tell you that your aunt was in one, their aunt was in one, and got really hurt. But it was certainly not a secret. She tried it out on the babysitter the very next day. Luckily, I had prepped her. Lesson number 3, you have way more strength than you believe. And if you act positive, others will believe in your strength, and you will gain strength from that as well. To celebrate my 5 years of being cancer-free, I worked 35 miles in the Long Island 2-day, raising several $1,000s along the way. The following year, I met a woman at a business function who told me about a new organization that was starting up on Long Island, Pink Aid. I was introduced to Allie and Chris Mitchell, and well, the rest is history. I have served as the Grant Committee Chair for the past 2 years, currently serve on the Advisory Council, walked the runway as a survivor model with my mother at Pink Aid's annual luncheon, and I continue to help raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to support Pink Aid's mission. That mission of helping underserved and underinsured Long Island women survive breast cancer treatment with support and dignity, to provide screening for women in financial need, and to empower breast cancer survivors to heal by helping and inspiring others. Pink Aid gives grants to organizations that assist women with expenses such as rent, transportation to and from treatment, food, babysitting, and the like. Adelphi has been the proud recipient for the past 3 years of significant Pink Aid funds for their social work program at Nassau University Medical Center and for compassionate care. With those funds, they have been able to help women in need. As a survivor, I know what it is like to go through breast cancer with the support of family and friends and having the financial wherewithal to have the tests and see the doctors that I needed to. I was one of the lucky ones. There are others who don't have the privileges that I do. I learned that it is truly a gift to be able to help others get through what I have been through. I have pulled other survivor friends into the Pink Aid fold, where they now serve as volunteers. And if I haven't gotten to you yet, I will. I have made new friends through Pink Aid who are truly special to me, my Pink Sisters. I have met the wonderful leaders of the organizations we have assisted, including Hillary Rutter and many of the women we have helped. I have 4 friends who have been diagnosed in the past year and a half alone, and I have spoken to many other friends of friends. Friends have been calling me the breast cancer whisperer. I made it through by approaching this methodically, placing one foot in front of the other with my eye on the goal. When I walked the runway in the Pink Aid fashion show, I was asked to choose a mantra that continues to be relevant in my life. Accept your past with no regrets. Handle your present with confidence, and face your future with no fear. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you for allowing me to share my experiences with all of you.
Thank you so much, Michele. And now I'd like to invite 2 of the social workers that Pink Aid actually helps to fund to provide services to women who don't have the resources that Michele was talking about. So I'd like to invite Lois Goetz and Angela Papalia, our 2 bilingual social workers.
Hi, my name is Lois Goetz, and I'm a bilingual social worker with the program. I've been here for the past 11 years. Over 30 years ago, a dear friend of mine called me and whispered into the phone, "I have breast cancer." I could not believe it. She was being treated at a major medical center in Manhattan, and she was in her early 30s. In those days, people whispered breast cancer. I was there for her, but I never imagined that I would be working with breast cancer patients in the future. I was at the beginning of my social work career. I had no experience with breast cancer, but I was there for her as a friend. I can't tell you how gratifying and inspirational it is for me to be working with breast cancer patients. At this point in my career, I work with underserved women diagnosed with breast cancer at Nassau University Medical Center, and we do benefit tremendously from the Pink Aid grant. What I've learned is that every woman comes to her diagnosis with a history of experiences and ways of coping, reflecting her culture and her temperament. Obstacles that impact treatment are tremendous. Fears and anxieties related to illness and immigration in our population, financial and legal challenges, transportation needs, childcare demands, employment disruption, and limited literacy. Our program provides twice weekly patient navigation, counseling, and advocacy services at the hospital in both breast and oncology clinics. We're available to patients beginning at the time of diagnosis and continuing through treatment and survivorship. Every patient is given an opportunity to meet with a social worker immediately after she receives the devastating news of her diagnosis from the breast surgeon. We provide support and navigation to patients throughout their experience with breast cancer, chairside in oncology, in the office, and by phone. In the oncology suite, patients are seated, and those of you who are survivors know what the setup is. At NUMC, there are no partitions between the chairs, so often we have informal support groups going on in the oncology suite in Spanish, which is quite amazing and quite meaningful. We're able to ensure that every barrier is overcome and treatment is not interrupted. We are able to intervene. If the nurse notices that a patient has missed a few appointments, we reach out to that patient and try to find out what's preventing her from getting to the hospital, what's going on. Is there something going on in her life, at work, with her family that is interfering? And we make sure that we address that need so that she gets to her next appointment. I feel so fortunate to have this opportunity to accompany breast cancer patients through some of their darkest hours. The strength and determination that they demonstrate in spite of all of these incredible obstacles is truly amazing and inspirational. As a social worker, it's tremendously meaningful to hear back from many survivors who reflect upon their journeys and express gratitude for the guidance and support that they have received from our program. And we have some of our patients from NUMC here tonight, and I'm really glad to see them. It's always exciting for me to see them. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angela Papalia, and I'm Lois's counterpart. I'm one of the bilingual social workers here, and it is truly humbling and inspiring to stand here before each and every one of you tonight. This is a really extraordinary place, the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program, because anything can happen. And every single one of us at the Breast Cancer Program are dedicated to the cause. We all know someone who has been touched by breast cancer. We've all been humbled by situations in our life where we've had to reach out for help. And we all understand how much courage it takes to ask for help in our darkest of moments. We also know how important it is to celebrate the great and the triumphs. And that's why it's inspiring and humbling to be here tonight to see all of you, because each of you represent hope for each other, for us. You're the reason why we come here every single day and continue to fight against breast cancer. I'm fortunate enough to work with extraordinary women each day under Hillary's leadership. And throughout the history of this program, Hillary and the staff has been able to have the freedom, thanks to generous funding over the years and fighting for that funding every day of every year, to offer to women and their families, including men who have been diagnosed with breast cancer and their sons and their children, the different types of services, because as we know and recognize that every person is unique. And we have the flexibility and the leadership to go into the community and really address the individual complexities that each person is dealing with. One of the initiatives that we started this year is a cafecito, which loosely translated in English is a coffee clutch, because we recognize that our geographic location here in Garden City is a bit challenging to get to and to access. The women that we have the privilege of working with at Nassau University Medical Center often don't have the resources that are necessary to just get here with transportation. So we started a cafecito in the community that's located next to the train station and the bus station, and we have Metro cards and other means of assistance to help the women attend the group. It's held twice monthly, and it's really like coming into our dining room. We have a table in the back of an organization where we have coffee and refreshments, and we talk about what's going on, and we celebrate the triumphs, and we support each other through the sorrows. And it's a safe place to talk about the things that you don't usually talk about in the Hispanic community. As an Italian American, I was grown up in a family, raised in a family where cancer was always a part of my life. And my mother's an oncology nurse, so nothing was sacred. But in a family where you didn't talk about cancer, we were forced to. And it's so hard when our family of origin and our culture doesn't allow us the opportunity to get the support that we need, support that gets us through each moment, support that gets us through each appointment to the next step, so we can be here in this place and celebrate the triumphs. So each of you are inspiring to each of us, and I thank you for that. And I think every night, at the end of the day, it's so fulfilling to be able to say, okay, we did a good job, we fought the fight today, what's next tomorrow? And I come home and I see my 3 little girls and I think, that's tomorrow. And it's because of each and every one of you in this room that I can be hopeful every day that these 3 little girls hopefully will know a world without breast cancer. So I thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Alida Rubenstein, our volunteer hotline coordinator.
Thank you so much. As you heard, I'm Alida Rubenstein, the hotline and volunteer coordinator for the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program. I've been with the program for 3.5 years. When they hired me, they got 2 for the price of 1, because not only am I a social worker, but I am also a breast cancer survivor. I was diagnosed 14 years ago, and I really wish I had known about the Adelphi Breast Cancer Program, because I really had no one to talk to who understood what I was going through. And when our amazing leader, Hillary Rutter, and this staff that we have are so amazing, and I really wish I had heard about the program and reached out. Because when you're diagnosed, there is nothing like talking to someone who has walked in your shoes and heard those words, you have breast cancer. And when you speak to some of these volunteers who heard those words and are now volunteering and helping others, there is nothing more inspirational for someone who is just starting on their journey. I feel so very fortunate to have the opportunity to work with our amazing volunteers who inspire women every day and let them know that they have battled breast cancer and won the fight, not only surviving, but truly living and thriving. I have to tell you that at first I was hesitant to take this job. I thought I didn't want to be around people who were sad and thinking and talking about breast cancer all the time. Well, I was so wrong. Our volunteers are the most upbeat, compassionate, intelligent, informed people I could ever hope to know. Our volunteers are true superheroes. They staff our hotline 365 days a year. They provide breast education workshops and table at health fairs, libraries, and anywhere people gather. There are individuals who would never think to call the hotline, but when they see our volunteers tabling in their community, they will often approach the table to ask questions that they have been holding on to for a very long time. Our outreach volunteers have been instrumental in helping women to get low-cost or no-cost mammograms. We have about 100 volunteers, each one with their own inspirational story that I would love to share with you, but that would take all night. I will just highlight 2 of our volunteers who are long-time thrivers. Our volunteer Roz, who has been living with metastatic breast cancer for 17 years. And she is not just surviving, she is thriving. At 86, she swims twice a week at the JCC and often travels to Manhattan to meet her daughter and daughter-in-law for a fun day in the city. So you can see how truly inspirational that can be to someone who calls our hotline and was just diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer. Our volunteer Nargis is a 37-year thriver. When Nargis was diagnosed, no one was even talking about breast cancer. She was very concerned that she wouldn't be around to raise her young children. She started writing poetry for them so that they would know her, even if she wasn't there. Well, Nargis is here and is a published author with 3 poetry books, which she sells and donates the profits to us. Every fall, we have a new volunteer training, and I'm always so pleased and amazed how passionate and committed each new group is to helping others who are going through what they themselves have been through. This year, we were very fortunate to have a male breast cancer survivor participate in the training. We have had calls from men diagnosed with breast cancer, and now they will also be able to talk to someone who understands what they are going through. I have so many stories about how our volunteers have helped others. With time limits, I will just share one. We had a caller the other day who called the hotline from her car on the way home from her appointment with her doctor. She had just been told that she had breast cancer. She was crying, and our volunteer asked her to pull over while they spoke. She was very worried about how to tell her family. Coincidentally, this volunteer had a similar diagnosis 20 years earlier. After they spoke for quite a while, the caller was much calmer and ready to talk to her family about her diagnosis. She thanked our volunteer, explaining that after speaking with her, she now knew that her diagnosis was not a death sentence. Our volunteers are the heart of our program. We have a small staff, and we couldn't do all that we do without our volunteers. They do something that no one else can do. They give our callers hope. They can say that they have been where the caller is today and are now well and even volunteering to help others. Many times our volunteers will continue to talk to a caller throughout their entire treatment. They will check in after surgery, chemo, radiation treatments, reconstruction, and beyond. Callers have expressed how much this continuous support means to them. I would just like to close with a thank you note. Well, it's really more of a love letter to our amazing volunteers. Thank you so much for embracing me when I first joined the program. Thank you for your generosity of spirit in sharing all your knowledge and information. And boy, do you have a lot of knowledge and information. Thank you for always being there to answer a call 365 days a year, at night, on the weekends, and even major holidays. Thank you for stepping away from dinners and parties to take or make a call. Thank you for reaching out to me with any questions you might have to make certain that a caller's needs are always being met. Thank you for always responding so quickly to a request for a specialty call. Thank you for being that approachable and friendly face at health fairs, libraries, and anywhere you are asked to table. Thank you for all your creative ideas for fundraising and fundraising. One complaint our volunteers express is that we thank them too much. I'm sorry, but that is not going to stop. We all thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you.
You know, when I asked the social workers to speak, I got a lot of eye rolling and no, not me. But are they amazing? Now, it's my honor and privilege to introduce Christina Demosthenous. Did I get it right? I've been practicing all day. Christina went through the training to become a Hotline volunteer last year. During that short time, she has been a huge asset to our program. Christina regularly speaks with young women who call the hotline. She was a young newlywed herself when she was diagnosed. She is glad to provide support to women on the hotline, to validate their feelings and listen to their stories. And tonight, we are honored to have her share her story with us. Christina?
Good evening, everyone. I can finally say my name is Christina, and I'm a 12-year breast cancer survivor. We've heard some amazing stories tonight about strength, perseverance, and hope in the midst of a cancer diagnosis. And I thank you for listening to just one more story, mine. It was a beautiful spring morning in the year 2005. I was 32 years old, a newlywed, and pregnant. And on that day, when everything was perfect in my life, I discovered a hard lump in my breast that felt very wrong. I called my obstetrician. He immediately sent me for an ultrasound. After that confirmed a suspicious mass in my right breast, I was sent for a biopsy, and unfortunately, a few days later, I got the call that I have invasive ductal carcinoma, breast cancer. So as you might imagine, my diagnosis was devastating to me, and for so many reasons. First and foremost, I was pregnant. I wanted nothing more than for me to be a healthy mother who gave birth to a healthy child. And I wasn't sure about that anymore. Second, I had lost my father to lung cancer when I was younger, and it brought back many painful memories. And the realization that I had no clue what he had gone through. It is so different when you're on the other side of the table as the patient. Third, I had to find a way to tell my mother that her daughter had breast cancer, and that's something I feel that no mother should ever have to hear. And finally, I had to tell my husband, the man who had just committed to spend the rest of his life with me and raise a family, that all that was now in jeopardy. But overall, my diagnosis was consumed by my pregnancy. You see, I had a hormone-receptive cancer, which meant that my cancer was feeding off my hormones to grow and possibly spread. And with the skyrocketing hormones of pregnancy, I was like a ticking time bomb. My doctors also told me that breast cancer tends to be a little more aggressive in young patients. So between my age, my pregnancy, and my hormone receptor status, things were not very optimistic. The other issue was that I was only 12 weeks pregnant. It was very early on in the pregnancy, a very sensitive time in the fetal development. So it wasn't as if they could just take the baby early. And if I kept the pregnancy, I'd have to go through the traditional breast cancer treatment, which would harm the baby. So of course I started to panic. It's not what I wanted to hear. My options did not look too good. So I went for a second opinion, and then I went for a third opinion and for a fourth opinion, because I wanted some doctor out there to tell me that I and the baby were going to be okay. Unfortunately, nobody could tell me that. I had a choice to make. If I wanted to save my life, I knew what I had to do. If I wanted to keep the baby, I'd be harming the baby. I mean, there was just no easy way out. With the experience of losing my father, I knew in my heart that I could never knowingly do something that would jeopardize my life and leave a child behind. And there was no way on earth I was going to risk the baby's life. So I knew what I had to do, and I tell you, my decision was heart-wrenching. The days leading up to the termination of the pregnancy felt like I was on death row. A part of me was going to die, and I wasn't sure I would be able to go on after that. And that day came, and when I laid down on that operating table, and the doctor looked at me with sad eyes and said, "I'm really sorry." I said to him, if I live through this, I will live through anything, because I've never experienced such emotional pain. At the time, much to my dismay, I woke up a couple of hours later in the recovery room, and when I realized what had just happened, I wanted to die. You know, I envisioned myself climbing on top of a mountain and screaming at the top of my lungs, and then crawling down into a cave and withering away. And a few seconds later, I realized, oh my God, I still have breast cancer. And sarcastically I said to myself, oh, this is not the end, Christina. This is just the beginning. But when I said those sarcastic words, this is just the beginning, all of a sudden this little glimmer of hope came through. I thought, oh my goodness, if I can only beat the cancer and get healthy again, perhaps I can get my life back, hopefully have children, and grow old with my husband. And so I went on and I had my surgery, followed by chemo, radiation, and I started my 5-year hormonal therapy on tamoxifen. 2 years into tamoxifen, I realized I'm now in my mid-30s. I had harsh chemo that they told me would affect my fertility, and I thought, oh, another ticking time bomb. What if I can't conceive by the time I finish tamoxifen? You know, what am I going to do? So I asked my oncologist, can I please stop tamoxifen? I want to get pregnant. And she said, absolutely not. We're not going to do that. But she was willing to consider me pausing tamoxifen to have a child and then going back on the treatment to finish off my remaining 3 years. Then I started to worry. What if I caused the cancer to come back? Then this whole huge sacrifice would have been for nothing. So I went for a second opinion, a third opinion, and I attended various breast cancer conferences, got my case in front of a medical board, asking them, is it okay to pause tamoxifen in the middle of treatment and then go back on it? 12 years ago, nobody wanted to touch that. Nobody even bothered to answer me. Just one doctor came flat out and said, tamoxifen is a 5-year treatment. It's not what you want it to be. So if you want the full benefit, you have to finish it off. Something in my gut told me that I was ready to pause tamoxifen. So with the support of my oncologist, the rest of my medical team, my husband and my family, I took my last pill on December 31st, 2007. Gave my body a few months to clear itself out as I was instructed. And 2 months later, I took a nice long vacation with my husband in the Mediterranean. while we were on vacation, I realized that I was late. So I thought, could it be that my body's just readjusting after being on hormonal therapy? You know, it seemed impossible. But I did run to the drugstore, got the home pregnancy test, peed on it, and lo and behold, it said pregnant. I literally dropped to the floor, kissed the ground, thanked every God there was out there. And luckily, I had an uneventful, healthy pregnancy, and 9 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby boy. Now, I took one good look at him, and I thought, oh my God, what if I die? Who knows? I mean, my husband is an airline pilot. What if, God forbid, something happens to him? So I said to my husband, I'd like to give him a sibling. So I did not go right back on tamoxifen. I went on to have my second healthy baby boy. So it has been now 12 and a half years since my breast cancer diagnosis. And what this whole experience brought to light was that the many challenges that breast cancer patients face. For one thing, cancer cells attack a whole lot more than our bodies. For me, my breast cancer went beyond my breast. It attacked my emotions, my spirituality, and basically all of my hopes and dreams. And while I had wonderful support from my family and friends, and my doctors were very focused on removing the tumor and any lingering cancer cells, I was sitting there alone thinking, how am I going to find the strength to go on with the rest of my life? Would I have to build new dreams? This was before I was able to have my children. And if I did, would the cancer come back and steal them? I mean, unfortunately, that battle is an ongoing battle, of course. Every 6 months I wonder, will the cancer come back? But it was at that point that I realized that I wanted to make myself available to other breast cancer survivors and their family and friends who may be feeling alone, overwhelmed, desperate. And that prompted me to join the Adelphi statewide breast cancer hotline, which is an amazing group of individuals. We had a glimpse today, but I can't tell you, they are just amazing. And on that note, I'd like for all the hotline volunteers to please stand. So I can applaud you. We can applaud you. All the volunteers, please stand. Spread out. And I would like breast cancer survivors to please stand. Any family and friends who are here in the audience, because without you, we would not be here. So let's just all stand for being here for this great cause. Thank you for listening to my story.
Please join me in thanking this wonderful panel of speakers, Michele, Christina, our social work staff. And remember, look, it's really powerful to look at and see all of the breast cancer survivors here in this room. And what I want you to walk away with is I want you to remember that you're not alone. You're not alone in this journey, and that we are here to help. And get home safely, and thank you for coming tonight.